Hello, I'd like to make an update on the Will Knowland case. If you've been following this refers to a lecture at Eton, which is one of Britain's most famous public schools. Um, I'm going to try and make this compact because there's nothing worse than having a video than running out of time. Seems to be happening a lot recently. I seem to have space issues. So I'll get to the point. It's unfortunately not a good conclusion. So just reading from the Times here from a few days ago, Jonathan Coles, this report by Jonathan Coles, the decision to sack an Eton College tutor embroiled in a free speech row has been upheld on appeal. The governing body of the £42,500 a year school has backed the dismissal of Will Knowland over his online lecture he gave on radical feminism. Now, this case has opened up a big debate on free speech and the nature of free speech in our educational establishments. And this has really divided opinions. A lot of the establishment of Eton has backed uh, the headmaster, Simon Henderson, for sacking Will Knowland, but a lot of the students themselves have signed a petition criticising it and backing Will Knowland. Um, I'm not going to read out the whole report here because it's a bit lengthy, but among those critical of the decision was the Free Speech Union, launched by the former journalist Toby Young, and he told the Mail Online, "This is a betrayal of the school's 580-year history of encouraging its pupils to think critically and independently about difficult questions. Let's say it is another battle in the war over the college's values under the headmaster Simon Henderson." Now, what I find a little bit galling, having seen the lecture, and that's important, I have actually seen his lecture, The Patriarchy Paradox. I don't know if it's still on YouTube. The last time I checked, it was. Um, is his rationale. He says he is acting to uphold the school's progressive values. And he claims that he isn't pandering to woke orthodoxy, but he is upholding progressive values. Well, if we take progressive as an adjective, it means forward thinking, it means progress. There's nothing progressive about basically censoring views you don't like. Now, I watched, like I say, the lecture. It's just over half an hour. I think he made a lot of pertinent points, a lot of important points about the role of men, about the idea of patriarchy, about issues that impact men and boys. Um, I'm not going to say I absolutely agree with everything he said. For example, I think he could maybe have worded his stance on rape better because that maybe came across like he was downplaying rape against women. Because he was highlighting the fact that rape against men in prisons is a serious problem. And I think that was a sticking point. And some of his critics say that some of his facts are wrong. Now, if that's the case, then he can be challenged on that. But I don't think that this is about some of the lecture being factually wrong. As a lecturer, he has a responsibility to fact check. Um, but I really don't think that alone is the issue. I think that he has been sacked for ideological reasons because, frankly, he dared to question radical feminism. And what does this lead to? It leads to the conclusion that there are certain ideas and movements that you cannot question without consequences. In this case, radical feminism. What we have here is a male lecturer basically being punished because he questioned the narrative of radical feminists. There really is no other way to gloss it over. I mean, when you look at the lecture itself, it's hard to find any other conclusion. And I went in with that with an open mind. I was thinking, okay, if there's areas of this I disagree with, I'm going to say so. Uh, is he being reckless? Is he being overtly misogynistic? Absolutely not. I don't think anyone can look at that lecture honestly and see it as misogyny. He is criticizing radical feminism, but if that's misogyny, then a lot of women are misogynist because they criticize radical feminism. Um, and I've seen feminists talking about the need for free speech. Well, I hope the same feminists will criticize this decision because ultimately it comes down to this. People can dislike what Will Knowland is saying. They can even question some of the accuracy of it. Fair enough. But if it's about what he was talking about, rape, then okay, that can be questioned. But the issue here is that Henderson told him to take down the video 6 times. He refused. Now, some say this isn't censorship. It clearly is. If you take a video down, I know as a creator, it's not that easy to just upload a video once you take it down. Anyway, that's censorship. Whatever way you look at it, it's a demand to, I don't like your opinion, take it down. The reasoning for this is not that he made mistakes in some of his statistics, it's that he is not progressive. That's the rationale given for this. And there's real world implications because Will Knowland is not super wealthy. I understand that his home is provided by Eton College, so because of the sacking, there's a very real possibility that he and his family are going to be homeless. And I understand that one of his children is disabled. So there's real world implications of this. In fact, he himself has said, "My wife and I will be made homeless. Where for 5 children, I'm raising money to challenge my dismissal in the employment tribunal if necessary." I don't want to run out of space in this. So I'm just going to say this. As a society, we have to allow controversial opinions. Now, I personally don't think his views are controversial. I think a lot of the things he said can be checked by empirical evidence. Some of them might be inaccurate. Some of the things he said around rape, maybe he should have provided a bit more sources to that. And I would have worded it differently. I think he didn't. It was a little bit foolhardy of him to describe rape in the way he did. I don't think he's necessarily downplaying rape against women, but it came across that way. Um, but the lecture wasn't attacking women, it was simply pointing out that the feminist narrative about patriarchy is misleading. If it is still up, I urge you to watch it. Even if you get the feeling that you won't agree with him, that's fine. You can watch it and still disagree, but at least be reasonable. Um, as for Simon Henderson and the other um, establishment figures at Eton, I think they're being disingenuous. Say that this is about progress. It's not progressive to censor differing views. And frankly, we have had a track record in this country in recent years of education establishments, particularly in tertiary education, in this case at Eton, of penalising non woke views. I.e., if you criticise Black Lives Matter, if you criticise feminism, etc., you're going to be targeted. That is what has been happening in recent years. It's undeniable. Um, and I think it's deeply, deeply concerning. Deeply concerning. On a more optimistic note, Cambridge University recently ruled that free speech should be protected. That's a good sign, but we need more of that. Um, this has real world implications. Is it progressive to make a man homeless at Christmas and his family? On the issue of areas of the lecture that are inaccurate, maybe Will Knowland has a responsibility then to provide sources or to amend those mistakes if they are indeed mistakes. But what this comes down to is he is being punished for giving the lecture online. It wasn't actually delivered. And ultimately, it's because he dared to question feminism. I have no doubt feminists will support the decision, but feminists are actually, in my experience, a lot of third wave feminists are very intolerant of dissenting views from both men and women. They think that they're above criticism, and they think that if you criticize them, you're a misogynist, so you're against women's rights. This is one of the most, in my view, obnoxious angles that third wave feminists take. They try to vilify their enemies as woman haters, because that's what misogyny means. In other words, if you insist that their narrative is misleading and vilifies men, then that somehow means you're anti-women. It's utterly absurd. It's He mentioned something in the lecture actually, which is significant, and that is the vast majority of women don't self-identify as feminists. Why is that? I think it's because the vast majority of women know that there are negative connotations with the word today because of the way that third wave feminists generalize men and blame all the problem that women face on the so-called patriarchy. Recently, just an anecdote here, there was an accident, a deadly accident in Avonmouth outside Bristol. 4 men were killed, including a 16-year-old boy, 4 males. Now, this is typical of the fact that men occupy the most dangerous jobs. I think it was a chemical treatment plant. This awful tragedy leading up to Christmas. Four, 4 males killed. That's not the fault of women. It's just pointing out that that's the sort of thing that feminists ignore. The most dangerous occupations are still held by men. Male suicide rate is higher. More men have died from COVID. Um, Vast majority of inmates are men. Women frequently don't get the same sentence as men do for the same crime. There are a lot of areas that are clearly not balanced. In all those things, feminists downplay or outright ignore them. So I do think that modern third wave feminists is incredibly dishonest and divisive and intolerant. Will Knowland's crime is to speak out against it. You may not like his views, but if you truly believe in democracy, you have to support his right to have them. If any of the things he has said is inaccurate, that can be challenged. But to completely censor the entire lecture because of ostensibly one segment of the lecture, I think is wrong. I'm going to wrap this up because I don't want to run out of time. That's the update, and it's very unfortunate. It's worse than unfortunate. It's troubling, very troubling. And Eton and Simon Henderson deserve all the hate they get over this, in my opinion.